Presentation is Design Thinking, Why and How You Should Use It. Holly is a senior design manager and she works at BB7, which is a product development consultancy working across the product development spectrum from concept to completion. Holly earned her BFA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and her master's in design management from Pratt Institute of Design in New York City. She has spent more than a decade leading cross-functional teams across design disciplines. And without further ado, can't wait. Take it away, Holly.
Thanks so much, you guys. Thanks everybody for being here. I am going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Can you confirm, Josh, that you can see my my cover slide?
Looks great.
Okay, excellent. So thanks so much, you guys. I'm here today to talk about design thinking, why and how you should use it. I'll give a little bit of an introduction about myself and about design thinking, including a brief history. Then we'll jump into the why, the how, and follow up with Q&A at the end. So a little bit about me. I'm a senior design manager. I work in product development, as Josh said. I work at a product development consultancy in Madison, Wisconsin. There's my contact information. Feel free after this talk, if you have any questions or you want to have a conversation or continue the discussion, please feel free to reach out. I love to talk about this stuff. I get passionate, and hopefully I won't talk too fast and Josh can slow me down if he needs to. So basically, I am originally from Wisconsin. I went to the W-Madison and I got my bachelor's in fine arts. And then after that, I moved out to Washington, D.C. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for graduate school. I knew I wanted to do grad school, but I wasn't really sure what. And so I lived out in D.C. for 5 years before I found the perfect program for me. And I moved to New York City to study at Pratt Institute of Design, where I got my master's in design management. And that's a little bit like an MBA for creative people. All those kinds of business type courses, strategic thinking, strategic design, and basically the tools to help you bridge that gap between design and business. And here I am. We graduated at Radio City Hall in New York City, and that was kind of exciting for me. But the graduate program I was in, the focus was on people, profit, and planet. And during this program, that's when I really got my first taste of design thinking. When I was in New York, I was out there for 8 years where I kind of developed my career. I worked at a number of different design firms and design studios, working across design disciplines, leading project teams in a variety of industries, from health and wellness to hospitality, education, real estate. I mean, a whole big spectrum of stuff. And my last position, I was the director of program management at a brand strategy firm, I should say. Where am I today? I'm currently at BB7. Like I said before, this is our tagline, your big idea just got real. I work with a cross-functional team of different disciplines, engineers, industrial designers, physicists, and that's actually kind of the heart of design thinking, is using these multidisciplinary teams to come together to create these rich solutions. So I'll get a little bit more into that here. So design thinking. Normally this is when I would say, can I see a show of hands? How many of you have heard of design thinking? And then of course, how many of you have actually used it in your work? And but I will just assume that a lot of you are curious and you're here to learn more. So basically, design thinking is a way of actualizing your ideas and your concepts. It's very human-driven, human-centered, and prototype driven. And essentially it can be applied to any business field, and you should definitely use it early in the decision-making process. This can reduce risk later on when you're developing a new product or a service. So a little bit of history. basically in the 1960s, there were all these different design movements, and nothing was called design thinking back then. But in America, they were doing design science. And this is when industrial designers were trying to get away from engineering and sciences, and also product designers were trying to get away from engineering and sciences. So industrial design was still very much based in facts that could be measured, improving things, and basically designers were working in places like university labs or factory floors, certainly not the trendy studios above, the coolest coffee shop in town that we might see these days. Design teams were elite, and they were exclusive and process driven. Meanwhile, in the 60s in Scandinavia, they were doing something called cooperative design or participative design, which is a lot like what it sounds. And basically, they were inviting everybody to get involved in these design discussions. So all kinds of disciplines were included in product development. Basically, the designers were the facilitators and the guides. And you'd have everyone from experts to workers and inhabitants co-designing products and services. Basically, you didn't have to be this expert or super specialized. It was inclusive. And the second wave of design came here in the 1980s. Basically, these designers were put under the microscope. People wanted to understand what made designers tick. What was it about designers that had these creative problem-solving techniques that other people just were not using? And basically, learning about the designers and how they were thinking helped open doors for other professionals to emulate these creative thinking techniques. So then in the 90s, this was the rise of service design, and essentially design focus moved beyond these tangible artifacts. So people started using design to solve really complex problems. And then in I think it was 1990, or was it 2000, IDEO was formed, and it was unlike other design studios and firms because they welcomed all kinds of disciplines into their firm to solve these problems. So you had anthropologists, healthcare workers, people in education, all coming together to solve problems and work in product development. Excuse me. And like I said, this is the core. These things are kind of bubbling up. The core of design thinking is these multidisciplinary teams. And of course, in addition to IDEO, Harvard Business Review, and Forbes have helped popularize these terms: design thinking, human-centered design. So I'm going to get into the why now. And basically, this is, if people are, questioning what kind of value does this bring to us, we can talk about the financials. And design-led companies like Apple, Pepsi, and Procter & Gamble, and SAP have outperformed the S&P 500 by an extraordinary 211%. So if design thinking is executed properly and strategically, it can impact business outcomes and result in real competitive advantages. And how does design thinking help you, right? In product development, you're always asked to solve other people's problems. In order to solve those problems, you really need to understand and empathize with the users and what is important to those people who are using that product or service. You also need to consider this multidimensional stakeholder and a customer. Like it says here, having empathy for the boss, the manufacturer, the end customer. It's not just that end user. You want to take into account all those pieces of the machine and the puzzle so that you can have a product and service that can help everybody and make sense for the whole chain of events, supply chain, everything. So basically, how does this work? So there's 5 modes: empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And it's important to know that this is not a linear process. You can start with empathy and end with test, but oftentimes you have to go back to certain stages along the way. And a big part of design thinking is iterating fast. And, it's like the fail fast, so you could succeed sooner type of mentality. So empathy, this is when you really want to get to know your end user and you really want to conduct thorough research. I always like to say this is like the North Star. This is the stuff that's going to lead your whole process, all of the stages through to the end. And so I think that this is probably, in my opinion, one of the most important parts of this process, because you're trying to figure out, like I said, the end user, things that are important to them, and any underlying problems. So you're going to be conducting in-depth interviews, doing all kinds of contextual inquiry, benchmarking, focus groups, what have you, so on and so forth. And then you take those insights that you found from the empathy stage, and then you look at all of the different problems that you might be trying to solve and boil it down to what you think is the most important problem to focus on. And you're figuring out pain points, personas, and with that problem statement, you take that and you move to the ideate stage. Now, the ideate stage is the time to generate ideas. You do not want to be evaluating at this point. You want to be brainstorming and coming up with, yes, some reasonable, logical ideas, but some harebrained, crazy, wild ideas, maybe even ideas that can't be made real at all, but just generate. If you start evaluating now, you're really going to hinder that creative process. And then, of course, the best ideas that come out of that ideate step, they are going to inform your prototyping. You're going to take those best ideas and prototype them. And then you take those prototypes, whatever seems to be working, and from that stage, you take it into the tests. And of course, you want to do consumer feedback, usability testing, proof of concept, all that stuff. Now, again, you might need to move back to another step in the stage, in an earlier stage, if you feel like, wow, this really isn't solving the right problem. Maybe I didn't interview enough stakeholders. Perhaps, I only interviewed this end user, and it seems like we're not meeting all of the end users' needs. Let's go back to an earlier step in this process, and that's totally fine. And actually, that's healthy, and that's what is so beautiful about design thinking, is that you're learning all the way, you're testing, and you're moving forward, and iterating quickly. So I'm going to share just a few case studies. Basically, I don't know how many of you have heard of the Bank of America's Keep the Change program. I know Bank of America is not in Wisconsin, which is where I am. However, back in the early 2000s, the Bank of America wanted to find new ways for people to open bank accounts. They went to IDEO, and because they wanted to do something different in this very traditional industry that is kind of considered harder to change. And they wanted this fresh design thinking approach. And basically, Bank of America and IDEO together, they went straight to work trying to understand their banking users. They did a bunch of observations across American cities, talking to individuals, talking to families about how they do their banking and how they spend their money. So from these observations came these insights, and insights like mothers were often the ones running the family finances. And back in 2000, remember, this was before online banking was really a thing, and checkbooks were more of a popular banking tool. So often people would round up transactions to make balancing their checkbooks a little easier. And it also added a little spending buffer, right? And so this new service idea developed. These were savings accounts that were partnered with debit cards. So your purchases would be rounded up, and the bank then would match the savings to a certain dollar amount. This program became wildly popular, and since launching in 2005, 60% of new customers enroll in this program. So the big thing that it really empowered bank users And the big discovery, which I think is just fantastic, it helps bank users feel more in control of their finances, and it removes some of the shame of having trouble saving money. Now, how are we on time, Josh?
It looks like we are about 15 minutes in, so you're
Okay.
doing great. If you want
Okay,
5 minutes for questions, you've got 10 minutes to go.
Okay, good, because I have another case study, and I checked the time, and I thought it was, I feel like, oh no, I only have 5 minutes. So this case study is about something that we did at BB7, and we call it Eating Independently. We basically had a support broker. This was a woman that worked with a gentleman with spastic cerebral palsy. She came to us. She was a friend of one of our engineers, and she said, this person would love some help eating independently. Now, we didn't know what that meant at that point, but we were looking to do, we try to do a big pro bono project every year, at least one. And this happened to be the one that we decided to take on. And so I'm going to break this down into the design thinking stages so you can really try to understand how we applied it and how you could apply it. So we did this empathy portion where we really got to know our user, and that is the 65-year-old gentleman, Tom, and he has given permission to use this. Basically, he is an inventor, a tinkerer. He has lived with cerebral palsy his entire life. We did a ton of research. We interviewed him. We interviewed his support broker, his aide, who's also his translator. And we learned a lot about cerebral palsy, and through all these interviews, we learned that he's considered quadriplegic. He has a little bit of ability to use his left arm, but not at all his right arm. So he eats certain things every meal because he knows that he can swallow it and chew it properly. And basically, there were a lot of different troubles that he had with eating, from head shaking to unpredictable spasms that could send his arm, and if he's holding a fork, send things flying through the air. And the other problem that he had is that he is 100% cognitively functioning, super smart guy, but because of his speech impediment, because of his appearance, people always assume that he is cognitively gone. And this is very distressing for him and something he's had to deal with his whole life. And so we did all this interviewing, and what we figured out was that we boiled it down in the define stage to figure out how could we help him and what is one of the biggest problems for him, according to him, the end user. And he said, I'm good with a fork, but not something I'd have to hold like a hamburger or a sandwich. And that's what I'm hoping it can do for me. If I were to pick up a hamburger, it would be in pieces in between my fingers. I would kill it. So now we're talking about eating a hamburger, which for most Americans is something a lot of people eat every week, and you don't think twice about it. You get your burger, you get your fries, you take a bite, you eat your fries, you put your burger down, then you take another bite. Now this something so simple and something so quote unquote normal for most Americans is something that this gentleman could not do, and he wanted to do so badly, and he felt a lot of shame about the mess he was making, and he felt extremely self-conscious, and he had dealt with a lot of discrimination in his life and being made fun of, and so this was something really important for him and his dignity. And so we promised to find a way for Tom to eat a hamburger independently without killing it. So in the ideate stage, we took a team. We invited anybody on our team to be involved in this because it was pro bono and because it was something that was kind of an emotional heartstring puller. People were really excited to be involved in this project. And so we had all different members of our team. We had our electrical engineers, we had our software engineers, we had industrial designers, we even had physicists sitting in the room, mechanical engineers sitting in the room, and we did a big ideation session, and we had teams, and we started out generating ideas, right? What does this mean? Like, what can we do to help this person eat independently according to his disability and his needs? And we did a lot of very, very super basic drawings. And then we prototyped. And these were the very, very early, Frankenstein proof of concept prototyping. And to see, okay, so on paper, this looks great, but when you actually make it, is it actually going to work? And of course, this is a piece of foam. We knew exactly what kind of burger Tom liked to eat, cheeseburger with a little bit of ketchup, but he didn't really want anything else on there. And so we made these out of all different materials. Obviously these aren't going to be the final stage colors or materials, but we needed something to test. And so we tested in-house to see how that might work. And then we took them to Tom and we tested them with Tom and did those usability studies. And we also invited his aide to participate because somebody would need to set these things up for him. And we wanted to make sure it was intuitive and not too difficult for that user and that stakeholder as well, right? There's multiple stakeholders that you're thinking about. Out of those rounds, we determined that he was interested in having potentially a handheld device, even though he did have those unpredictable spasms. When he was in a place of stress, those spasms happened more because he had to focus his brain on more tasks. And the more tasks he had to focus on, the more out of control his spasms were and increased out of stress. So there was also this need for potentially a stationary device. And because he was a tinkerer and is a tinkerer and an inventor, he had custom designed his home. His table was a certain width so that his wheelchair could fit easily in and out, and he could push himself to and from. So we had this vise on our stationary device that was adjustable so that if he did want to eat in a restaurant, he could do that. Of course, this was all before COVID. And then, of course, we wanted to solve the hamburger problem, but we also wanted to make it adjustable so that we're thinking about other foods that he might want to eat. And one thing he mentioned was a piece of pizza. Again, he had never been able to eat a piece of pizza by himself. And so you can see there's an adjustable piece here, which was consistent with the handheld and the stationary device. And then you can see we did a lot of testing. So we did testing at BB7 with this device. This actually was great. We ate our hamburger that he liked, and we found out that it might be too heavy in a certain way. So we had to make adjustments. And here you can see Tom trying it out with his aide and his translator and her daughter in the background. And here we found some really cool insights. We did not expect for the stationary device for him to use his arm or his hand, and he loved that. He had the independence. He could choose to just move his head up and take a bite, or he could push it and get it into place, but it made him feel like he was in control and that he had some of his dignity back. And so you can kind of see we took a lot of different photos. We still were trying to figure out that last bite. How do you get that last bite, right? And of course, these aren't the final materials, but they were all food safe because, of course, we were testing, but we were testing with a human being, and a wonderful one at that. And we wanted to make sure that we were doing things the right way. And again, he had never been able to eat a hamburger by himself. He'd had somebody chop it up and he could jab it with a fork, but he wanted to be able to take a bite, then eat a fry, take a bite. He wanted to be like other people. And it was a great project and very meaningful to our team. And we're still in the process of making this happen. So to be continued. He wants this to be something that could be helpful for other people with similar disabilities, not just people with cerebral palsy, not just with his type of cerebral palsy, but other people who, like Parkinson's, or may have some other disability that makes it difficult to eat independently. And so with that in mind, Josh, is it that we only have 5 minutes?
We've got about 6 minutes left.
Okay.
And I think folks might be seeing my picture or video up at the top corner of your screen for the slides. So once you're ready for questions, if you want to shut off your screen share.
Sure. Okay, so in this last minute, I'm going to try to offer up a challenge before we move into the questions. And normally, if I do a talk like this in person, I like to do an exercise so you can actually have an aha moment of applying design thinking. And so instead, I'm just going to give you like a super fast forward, and we might eat 1 minute into that Q&A, and that's okay. But the challenge is this. So I want you to take this back to your team, and I'm not asking you to remember everything I say, but remember kind of the gist of it. And then you can go to Stanford D School their website. They have some excellent free resources and basically these really cool tools for having these like aha moments of applying design thinking. And one of them is called the Wallet Project. And this is when you start out, you literally, all you say to your team is, okay, I want you to design the ideal wallet. Go. And you say, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, go. And then you turn on some music and you see them kind of like, they've got paper, it's all printed out. You have paper and people are like drawing the ideal wallet. And you're like, okay, come on, guys, quick, 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 go, go. You're supposed to put on this pressure, right? And then at the end of the 2 minutes, you say, how did that feel? How was that for you? And people would say, that didn't feel so great. And of course it didn't feel so great because they weren't given any background or any depth into the problem, or it was literally this very traditional concept of problem solving through your own assumptions. And that's one thing with the empathy, it forces you to put aside all of your assumptions, all your biases, all of the different memories and experiences you've had that have informed you. When we put those things aside, it allows for more innovation. And if we don't, our own assumptions can make us risk averse. And of course, some level of risk is really important if you're going to have innovation and growth. And so the second time you say, all right, now we're going to do a design, the ideal wallet, the version with design thinking. And that is when you are going to start it all off and go through those steps. And you partner off and you interview your partner and you say, get out your wallet. I want to see your wallet. What do you have in your wallet? And then they interview each other and they go through each piece and you say, okay, tell the stories about why is that? Why do you have a photo of your child? Why do you have only a paper bill clip? You only keep money. You don't have anything but this very simple, slim, stash. Or why do you have, you never carry cash, you only carry cards. And then you say, okay, great. Now interview again and dig deeper, find out the stories, forget the wallet. We want to get personal. We want to get those empathy. We want to get those juicy details. Then we take those juicy details and we have our problem statement, and we take the things that are important to them and the insights you've discovered, create the problem statement. And then you take that problem statement and you ideate. And this is when you come up with, you want to try to draw, even if you're not a good artist, just draw it out. And then you share those drawings and you talk about why you did it that way. You get honest feedback, try not to defend your drawing, try to just sit tight, listen, and then have that person say, well, this drawing, this makes sense. I think this could really work for me, but this part couldn't. Or I don't really like what I see here, but this works. And then you go back to the drawing board and you do more ideating or more prototyping and then testing and blah, blah, blah. I think that the aha moment comes when people are like, you know what, really understanding that person and designing for that person and not just designing for what I think they need. It brings so much rich insight and it can lead to some awesome products and some awesome services. So I really, really hope that you can take this information and it's valuable for you and for your team and for ultimately the end users. There's so many great products and services out there, and especially during COVID, people need things, people need problem solving, and you don't need to be a designer to use design thinking. So I'd love to do some Q&A. I think maybe we only have 2 minutes. I apologize.
I think we're down to our last minute. If you want to close your screen share, great.
I just hit stop sharing, but
there was some chatting on UX and design thinking, and Ryan just asked, where's the best place to learn about UX/UCD principles during our COVID-induced free time? So any thoughts on best way to learn about design thinking right now and how it relates to UX?
Sure. So first of all, like I said, the Stanford D School, if you go on there, they have so many resources. I think they are just so encouraging of people to learn more about design thinking. And it was founded by one of the founders of IDEO, go figure. And so they've really considered how people can learn. I would recommend that. I would recommend I'm trying to think some of my favorites. And this is Ben asking this.
Let's see. It was Ryan Quincy.
Okay, well, if you email me, I can't, besides Stanford D School, I'm like kind of drawing a blank, but email me. I'm happy to send a bunch of resources your way. I'd love to share more.
Cool. Well, we've hit our 2:40
Ah,
mark. I
sorry,
think your example
I'm
at
a
the end was
talker.
great. Um, so thank you so much for your presentation. I'm going to hang out for another few minutes here. I don't know if folks are going to hop off, but if any other questions or if there are other things to bring up, can be here for a couple more minutes before we
Oh,
stop the broadcast.
okay, then I would love. I'm just seeing some of the questions now. So understanding the user journey, etc. So these pain points, you go through that user journey, you find out those pain points, roadmap from start to finish, and those pain points you can then try to empathize with and solve problems kind of aligned up with those pain points, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I love
Well,
these comments. This is great. Thank you guys so much for joining.
and thank you so much for presenting for us and being one of our very first breakout sessions.
Yay.
So
Well,
thank you so much for bringing yourself and your experience, Holly. And to everyone, thanks for being here and hope you have a great rest of your product camp.
yes, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Josh. You've been a great moderator. Those time checks, I always have to check because I talk super fast if I don't keep it in mind, and I can either go like through it like this or I go over. But it is so much fun, and I think it's so much about having these conversations and not being afraid to ask questions. I think so many people are afraid of looking like quote unquote stupid. You know what? Don't care. Who cares? If you don't ask the questions, you're never going to learn. And oftentimes, the people who are gaining the most are the ones who are like, I don't care if you think I'm stupid. I'm asking these questions, and then they're getting their answers.
Hmm.
And I definitely, you know, I think I was kind of raised to not ask questions. And then
Hmm.
actually, my husband's a total question asker. And sometimes I used to be embarrassed or I blush or like roll my eyes. I can't believe he's asking these questions. And now it's like, he asks these questions and he gets all these great answers, and then he has these conversations. And sharing knowledge is really important,
Mhm.
especially I think I was talking to you about this before with COVID. We really need these places, these inclusive places where we can
Yeah.
talk and support each other and build. And I don't know if you have to go to a next session, but I could talk and talk and talk.
Well, let's call it there.
Okay.
Thank you, Holly.
Yeah, sure. And what
Um,
about these comments? Will I be able to see these later and reach out to people, or?
I believe so. I
Okay.
believe it'll be part of the recording, and the
Okay.
recordings should be available in the future for everyone in one way or another. So
Great. Thank
thank you
you.
again, Holly, and hope you all have a great product camp.